Today on Sports Central, we'll be going over our next final prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over quite possibly the biggest dark horse in all of the Pac-12 and the nation next season, and that is the California Golden Bears. And this is a team that was 8-5 last season, ended up having a pretty good season in comparison to how many expected them to be. But whether or not this team could be a big dark horse in the Pac-12 next season, and why I think California could end up having a big season in 2020 is what we're going over here today. We're also going to be going over your returning production along with a full prediction and preview on every game on Cal's schedule heading into the 2020 season. So anyway, with that, let's look at your season trends from 2019 for this team. They were 8-5 overall once again. They were 4-4 between September and October, and then 4-1 between November and the postseason. So this is a team that was very up and down. I mean, if you look at their schedule and how it all went for them last season in 2019, I mean, they started off really well, had a couple of really good games right off the bat. Then they kind of dipped a little bit throughout the season, and they had a bit of a losing streak. And through there, they lost 4 straight games actually between late September, and they lost all of their games in October. That was due to a lot of injuries that this team had. However, once they were able to get Chase Garbers back, this team definitely picked up. So, I mean, it definitely shows how much of an impact Chase Garbers had on this team last season and how important it is for him to be healthy for this team as well. We have a few key wins for this team. Of course, they knocked off Washington in Seattle 20-19. They also knocked off Washington State 33-20. They beat UCLA by 10 on the road 28-18. Then they also beat Illinois in the Red Box Bowl 35-20. So this is a team, once again, very up and down all season long, but they still were able to have a really good stretch of games, especially towards the end of the season. They had several really good wins down the stretch. Once again, I mean, 3 of those key wins from last season were within the last month of action. So yeah, California definitely, this is a team that I think if they can stay healthy next season, I mean, looking at their returning production, it looks great in general. But I mean, this team has got a lot of potential to put up a big season. I mean, if you look at Chase Garbers and the time that he did play last season, put up 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and a 61% completion rate. So, I mean, his completion rate was kind of low. 61%, of course, is certainly something that can be improved on. But, I mean, he was able to put up a good amount of yardage, and he also had a great touchdown interception ratio, considering how much he was able to play last season. Plus, you got to consider he was dealing with injuries. So if Chase Garbers can be healthy next season and play full time, I think this California team is definitely one to watch out for. And many experts aren't really thinking much of California. I mean, I've seen a couple of experts who say, or actually I've seen one expert who says that California could be a 10-11 win team next season, but then again, it's not going to happen anymore because of course, the non-conference games being canceled. But, I mean, yeah, you kind of get the point. California definitely is a team that really people, I think, are underestimating, and they're not really realizing that Chase Garbers was injured for a good chunk of last season. And if Chase Garbers was able to be in for this team for the entirety of 2019, I think this California team could have been a 9-10 win team, no doubt on that. As far as the running back core looks, it looks really good. They returned their top running back in Chris Brown. Of course, he put up over 1,000 yards last season with 12 touchdowns, so that's going to be a big return there. They also returned their second running back in Marcel Dancy. Of course, he put up over 400 yards with 2 touchdowns last season. So, I mean, you got both of your running backs that put up nearly 1,500 yards combined last season, both coming back, which is going to be huge for this team. And, I mean, you can't forget Chase Garbers also put up 225 yards of rushing, too. So, I mean, he was a big impact on this team as well. As far as the receiving core looks, though, you do return your top receiver and Nico, and of course that's going to be a big return as well, considering he put up 520 yards last season with 3 touchdowns. But in the end, I mean, this was not much of a receiving team. This team was heavily a rushing team last season. Once again, looking back at your running back core, you had over 1,500 yards worth of rushing yards last season. So, and in the end, I mean, the receiving core, considering they did have to deal with a lot of quarterback problems last season, that kind of was bound to happen. However, they do lose their second receiver in Jordan Duncan. That is certainly something that I would be concerned about going into next season. I mean, he did put up 365 yards and 2 touchdowns, which really, in any other team or any other conference, really that's not a whole lot of yardage. Most good receivers put up over 1,000. But Jordan Duncan being the second receiver on this team, considering that he was second as far as the receivers go last season, you do got to consider that for sure. But as far as their third receiver, they do return him, so that's going to be good. Last season, he put up 295 yards with 2 touchdowns, and so it's going to be good to get Polk back as well. But in the end, I would expect Nico and Poke to both be your top receivers heading into next season. But as far as the offensive line looks, you lose one on there. You also lose one defensive lineman. You lose 2 linebackers and 1 in the secondary. So, I mean, in the end, you do lose 4 on the defense. But in the end, I mean, losing 4 on the defense is very average. Most defenses end up losing 4 to 5 every year. So, really for California, I'm not really concerned about that hardly at all. But, I mean, Jay Scarborough is definitely an underrated quarterback. I'd say he's probably one of the most, if not the most, underrated quarterback in the nation going into next season. He's definitely the most underrated in the Pac-12, I would say. I mean, once again, if you look back at last season, he was injured for a good chunk of it. He only played 9 games last year, and you got to consider it too. I mean, he only started 8 pretty much. But in the end, I mean, yeah, Jay Scarborough's last season, even though he only put up 1,700 yards, definitely don't overlook him going into next season. He's definitely a quarterback to watch out for. And if he's able to stay healthy, expect him to put up over 3,000 yards for the Golden Bears next season. And yeah, I'm actually serious about that. I think Jay Scarborough's, he's got the potential to have a 3,000-yard season in 2020. Brings up the question, is Cal a dark horse conference contender? And as you know, I'm pretty high on the California Golden Bears going into next season. I think this is a team that's definitely going to be one to watch out for. I think this is a conference contender. I mean, their division is very tough. Can't forget about that. But in the end, California, I think, has got the potential and the talent to be able to give their teams in their division a run for it. And I think definitely, I mean, if you look at the rest of their division, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for sure for California, but I definitely think they'll be able to contend at least and put up some pretty good wins next season against some pretty good teams. As far as your schedule looks, of course, you've had 3 games canceled now. Of course, you don't have your non-conference games since California is in the Pac-12. So you do not have to play UNLV, TCU, or Cal Poly, which really, in the end, I think is kind of California's loss. All 3 of those games I would consider California to be favorites in. I mean, that TCU game could be a bit of a tricky one for sure. That would have been a great one for sure. One of the better games, or one of the better non-conference games in the Pac-12 next season would be Cal and TCU. But in the end, you do not have to play that game, and also don't have to play against Cal Poly. So you do kind of lose 3 wins there, I would say. I mean, I definitely favor California to win all 3 of those matchups. But in the end, it's just kind of how it is right now. But you do start up their season on September 26th against Utah at home. And then you've got Washington State on the road and Pullman on October 3rd. You also have to travel to USC and then play Oregon in back-to-back weeks. That is going to be a tough stretch in through there. So I'd say your first month of action between September 26th and October 17th would definitely be your toughest stretch of games. Of course, you do have to play Utah, who is a great team in 2019. Then you can't forget about USC. They're looking very good. You got Oregon as well, who is bound to be a national contender next season. And then you got Oregon State on the 24th. That's going to be a road game. You also got Washington, Arizona State, Stanford, and UCLA to finish off your season. So in the end, you do have a pretty tough schedule, I would say. I mean, then again, their division in general is really tough to deal with in that Pac-12 North, having to play Oregon and Washington State and Utah and all them. Of course, Utah is not in the Pac-12 North division, but still, I mean, it's tough. They got to play them either way. But here's what I'm expecting out of your first 3 games. I do think you get a big win against Utah in week 1, and that's going to be kind of a wake-up call, I think, for a lot of people that are sleeping on California going into next season. That is going to be a very big win right off the bat. So they will beat off Utah at home, and it's going to be a close one. I think that's going to be a very good game for sure, one of the best games in the Pac-12 for next season, but California does get the win in the end over Utah. I also think you're going to beat off Washington State on the road. That's going to be an easy win. I think Washington State next season is going to be very down. I do not expect much out of them at all. And though I do think you do take a loss at USC on October 10th, that will be your first loss of the season. And USC, I mean, I went back and forth on that one, but I think after a road trip to Washington State, I do think it's going to be kind of a tough week, and it's going to be a tough transition having to play USC after a game at Washington State, and I do think you take a loss there. I also think USC next season definitely is going to be a team that will be ranked for a good chunk of the season. USC is definitely a team to watch out for, and so I do think that they do get the win there. But in the end, you are going to be 2-1 through your first 3 games, so that's really not going to be all that bad at all. I do think you take a loss against Oregon, though, too. That is going to be your second loss of the season, and very likely your last. I think Oregon is also another team that's going to be a very tough one next season. I mean, even though they are losing their quarterback, Justin Herbert, they still have got a lot of talent on that offense. They're a very quick team. They've also got a great defense on there. I think Oregon gets the win there in the end as well. I think it's going to be very close, and I think if there were to be a big upset in the Pac-12, that could easily be it there with California and Oregon. I think California has a good chance to pull an upset there. I think it's going to be a very close game too, but once again, coming off of a tough loss at USC, I do think they take a loss there against Oregon. But however, I do think you come off that Oregon game and you come off on fire. I think you get two big wins in the next couple weeks against Oregon State and Washington. And both of those games are going to be easy ones. I think that Oregon State next season, really not expecting much out of them. And then Washington, of course, that should be, or it could be a tough game, but I think California gets it done, and they win by over 14 points in that one. So you're going to head into your November with a 4-2 record, which really, considering how tough their schedule is coming into November, that is not bad at all. And here's what I'm expecting. I think you'll win all of your last 3 games. I think you beat off Arizona State, and that's going to be a huge win there. Arizona State next season is definitely going to be a big contender in that Pac-12 South, and I think Arizona State for sure could easily be one of the best teams in the Pac-12, but they could also be a big national contender too. Don't forget about Arizona State going into next season. They've got a ton of talent. Jaden Daniels at quarterback, he could be a dark horse Heisman contender. I think Arizona State is also a team to watch out for, and I do think California getting a win over Arizona State there is going to be very detrimental to Arizona State's chances of making it to the Pac-12 championship and winning their South Division in general. I also think that you'll beat off Stanford and UCLA, and I kind of went back and forth on that UCLA game. I think that could be a tough one, but I do think California does get the win over both of those teams in the end. So your record prediction for next season will be 7-2, which really, in general, is actually going to be a very good record. I mean, considering you're having to lose 3 of your non-conference games, I think California would have won all 3 of them. So if you were to have a full season in 2020, I would say California would be a 10-win team next season, which really is kind of crazy to think about. But I think California, for sure, they've got the talent there. And this would be a team that could easily be a big competitor for Oregon to win that North Division next season. I definitely think they'll be up there either way, even though their 3 non-conference games are canceled. But still, in the end, California will go 7-2 next season. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, though, on California. If you disagree with anything here, I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this preview, be sure to slap a like on it and subscribe as well. It really helps out the channel. I'd really appreciate that. But as always, thanks again for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you all later.